Good afternoon and welcome to the Digital Growth Summit's afternoon session. Influencer marketing is what we're talking about in this session. We're really excited. We have a great lineup of awesome people. In fact, I have to move my chair over here because these people are incredible. My name is Josh Oakes, and I'm honored that you all are here this afternoon, full of tips and tactics and scrappy stuff that you can use in your business. This afternoon, I want to let each one of these awesome people introduce themselves for 1 minute each. Tell us what company you're from, what you do, what your background is perhaps, what your company does, and then also basically what you guys do in influencer marketing. So I'm Josh Oakes, and full disclosure, my firm runs a social media safety website that we launched. We're in the business of helping people navigate digital. We launched it, and we wanted to get in touch with a lot of mom marketers, and we ended up buying a mom marketing network. So now we have 4,000 mom marketers. We have our own blog network that we only use internally to spread our social media safety for teenager message. It's kind of vertically inclined here, if you will. So very incestuous here at MediaLeaders in a good way. But we're deep in this. So I'm going to take notes from these awesome people and learn how we can spread our teen safety message and using our mom marketing thing. So let's go down the line. Tell us, nice, loud, and clear, your name and all that good stuff.
Great, thank you. Michael Burrito. I work for Lewis Global Communications. It's a medium-sized agency out of San Francisco, integrated communications. So we have a large digital kind of organization as well as PR. I run the U.S. digital operation out of San Francisco. So we're doing everything from influencer marketing, paid media, lead gen, and social content creative. I was recently asked to run the PR side too. So now, having zero PR experience, I am now responsible for figuring out organizationally how we meld digital and PR to become kind of one value proposition, content driven. Influencer marketing plays a huge role in that. So I'm really excited because I've done a lot of influencer marketing. The key to a successful influencer marketing program is ensuring that you have the right influencers. And I'll talk about that later.
Chakra Wisely. I'm heading up corporate communications for a company called Trinet. We run HR and benefit services, payroll for small and medium-sized companies. And my role over there is essentially everything that has to do with the external representation of the company. Before that, I worked for Sunnyvale, ran global PR in 17 countries over there, and had some other corporate gigs. Before that, I worked in agencies over in Europe. You can tell by the accent I'm not from here. So I started in Germany, worked there for a number of years for Edelman and EuroOSTG, and then came over to the US, worked for the Hoffman Agency, opened up the German office for Hoffman Agency in Munich, and then moved over to the US. And influencer marketing is huge. It's fun. I like it a lot because, to Michael's point, it integrates nicely into various aspects of the marketing mix, and so excited to talk about that today.
My name is Brad Cam. I'm a CEO at Talkable, and my background is I'm an entrepreneur. Started mostly real estate related investing companies. This is my first foray into tech, and what Talkable does is we power refer a friend programs for e-commerce companies. So effectively we are converting existing customers of e-commerce companies into influencers, and then helping them get friends or other leads to actually buy, to actually convert. So we're focused very much on driving sales through influencer marketing.
I'm Oliver Roop. I'm founder and CEO of Biglink. Biglink is a suite of tools for both publishers and advertisers that helps drive content-driven commerce. So in the influencer realm, influencers will tweet about, pin, post products, and we help those links be monetized in the sense that if their fans, followers click through to the advertiser and end up purchasing product, the influencer is paid. We have about 2 million websites that run our technology and a large number of influencers as well. We have relationships with about 50,000 advertisers covering pretty much everyone in retail, and we brokered close to 600 million in GMV last year. So it's a real business, and the influencer segment is a fast-growing part of our business. Previously, I was actually at Microsoft for 4 years up in Redmond. I started the team that did TV and movie downloads for the Xbox. but I left Microsoft in 2007. I actually went to business school and started Biglink in business school.
Cool. Welcome.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'm Vishal. Been in tech for about 15 years. But in 2008, started the first mobile monetization platform for apps. Before apps were a big deal in the US. And then sold that 2 years later, basically grew that into a bigger mobile marketing company. Then a few years ago, started an incubator called Team in Residence, where we do early stage investments. And about a year and a half ago, got super excited about the influencer space. I kind of look at influencers as the new apps because they're creating content, they're becoming overnight celebrities, just as the apps were doing back in 08, 09. And now they really don't have the tools and they don't have the ways to actually make that into a business. So I'm one of the co-founders of Captivate. We help influencers make a business from their passion.
That's awesome. Well, I'm pumped that all of you are out here. We asked them 4 major questions. What are best practices? And they all filled them out. We're going to try and pull this out of them. What are some best practices happening in influencer marketing? What's the future like? What are tools that you use? Give us some examples that you have. And then what advice would you give businesses that they want to get ahead of the game in the next 3 years in this space? I want to start first with Vishal. Can we start with you and talk about best practices? You talked about a couple things when you talked with us first. You talked about what hashtags perform best, and also you want the audience to not even realize that they're being marketed to. Can you talk about that as a best practice? You said product placement is gone. Can you talk to us about that?
Definitely. I think a lot of folks, when we think of content, first of all, it really makes sense to first talk about what channel you're talking to. If we're going to zoom in the conversation just on, say, Instagram, a lot of people don't use their descriptions and comments the right way. We find there's about a 30 to 40% lift in engagement just by using the right hashtags and also spreading that down into comments as well. So we're always telling people, if you look at the analytics data right now, filters are not really in style anymore. So the more real, the better. The more descriptive you can be in terms of what you're actually talking about to create that emotional connection and be very experiential. And then thirdly, use comments for tagging. The other big thing about discovery and going into product placement is that users can't find content. The feed is basically algorithmically designed. Snapchat just announced 2 days ago that the feed now is going to become programmatic on Snapchat as well. So users are not going to have any control over what they see. And as a result of that, if they want to search for something, the tags become even more important. And there's limits to what and how you can tag. So it's very important to think about what you're going to be talking about. And the second big thing on product placement, we really try to find folks, and you really want to connect with people that actually are thinking about that themselves natively. You don't want to create, give someone who doesn't like skiing, ski gear as a simple example, right? Because their audience will be able to tell. I think so I guess just best practices, it's really around experience, use a lot of tagging, don't use filters, and also create text on images. Those are also a big thing. And then right now, video still doesn't perform that well on Instagram, even though they're trying to artificially boost it. So whenever we meet influencers, everyone's trying to hack the feed. The latest hacks are post a minute video or longer on Facebook, be 45 seconds longer on Instagram. That's the way you get bubbled up right now. That's the latest hacks on the Instagram feed and Facebook feed.
Let's hold off real quick. I want to ask a question on that, and then we're going to get straight over to Brad. I've seen some brands that have over a 15-second limit on Instagram. Did I miss something? Is the limit now higher on video? Can you post on Instagram more than 15 seconds of video?
Yes, they're actually moving to long-form content. That's what's going to happen. Right now, you can post over 30 seconds, and there are already influencers and brands testing much longer than that.
Okay, great.
And ad units can also be 30 seconds according to ad.
And is this for everybody that can post more than 15 seconds now?
Everyone can post more than 15. If you want to get over 30, you can get, if you have a verified profile, basically, you get that.
Interesting. Hey, Brad, talk to us about your company, Talkable. I want you to teach us about double-sided rewards and why they're so important.
Sure. So for refer a friend programs, at its core, what you're really doing is you have an existing customer base, and you're trying to get them to become influencers, to become advocates for you. And so we found that the best way to do that is to provide them an incentive, which is similar to what you would do with kind of traditional influencers. But then you have this other piece of it, which is that you also want to give their friend a reason to actually go and make that purchase right then. So we've tested all different types of things, but we found that when we give an equal amount to the advocate and to the friend, that actually works the best. And we think that it's because it's seen as fair. So if I refer you and I get something and you don't, then it's seen as I'm profiting off of my friend. If my friend gets it and I don't, then it's seen as, okay, well, why are they getting this special reward when I paid full price? So we found after a bunch of different testing that that's actually the best answer. The best answer was the simplest answer. Give both people $20.
That's great. We see Lyft and Uber doing that. We've all seen that, right? Share with a friend, they get 15, you get 15. I love that. Let me dive right, Brad. We're not leaving you for just 1 sec. You said when influencers share via email, they're more effective in influencing purchases than on Facebook. Can you give us an example of that, or tell us why?
Yeah. So both. So the way that our screens are structured, the way that our programs are structured, is that we will show either pop-ups at various points in the customer journey, or we'll have links that you'll go to. So you'll click and you'll see, refer your friend, you'll get $20, they'll get $20. And so we have multiple share channels that they can choose from, and so we test share by email versus share by Facebook versus share by Twitter, and so on and so forth. And what we found is that the things that are actually causing people to buy are when I share with you because I thought you should buy this thing. So you specifically, my friend, this person, I think you should buy this shirt. I think this is really cool. When we found that when people just post on Facebook, it's very undirected. So the people that are consuming it, they're like, okay, was this an ad? Did my friend post this by accident? Did somebody hack their Facebook account? I mean, these are the types of questions that come up when you see ads on Facebook. Sorry, when you see shares on Facebook. On Twitter, it's even worse. Virtually no one was engaging. So when we looked at our data, we found that something like 0.5% of overall referral sales were coming from Twitter, to the point where it's been removed from most of our programs. Email accounts for about 85% right now. And so that tells you that what actually is causing people to buy is this sense of trust.
If you don't mind me jumping in, actually,
Yeah, I'd love that.
Contrary results. We don't have an apples-to-apples email comparison, but certainly on Twitter we see great business. I think it depends a lot on the community. We have great penetration in like sneakerheads, and one of the stories we cite a lot.
Talk to us about the sneaker story, the $300,000 in sales. I was getting to you next, so I love this.
Yeah, no worries.
This is great.
Yeah, Matt Halfhill, one of our influencers, had a tweet in December of now 2 years ago, where a single tweet about the new Nike Lady Liberties that had just been released generated about $300,000 in GMV sales, about $30,000 in commission revenue. Obviously, that is an outlier, but is by no means exceptional. He has a community of highly engaged sneakerhead fans. Notably, a lot of people were replying to his tweet, posting copies of their receipt and saying, I got one. So it was not spam. And we see sort of good micro verticals of that, right? It certainly doesn't work across the board, but there are communities of highly engaged commerce, communities on Twitter. Notably, Pinterest actually just turned affiliate links back on, right? And sort of their statement was it was about getting spam under control, but I think certainly it's about they observe influencers hanging out on Twitter where they know they can make money, and they had not been doing so on Pinterest. And so turning on the links gives them the opportunity to bring some of those influencers back. So it's something that platforms try to do, and we see good business.
So the $300,000 in sneaker sales from a series of tweets, or one tweet plus, and how many years did it take for that person to build rapport with all the followers? Because that's what people don't talk about here,
Sure.
right? They think it's an overnight success, and I think for all of you at this scrappy conference that we're at, you need to realize it's a lot of hard work. To get great speakers like this, influencers up here, but also that the $300,000 will not happen overnight. Now, I want to jump over to Michael right here. Michael, you said there is 1% of the population that's driving the conversation about a topic. Why is that?
If I could just take a step back, what I've been hearing a lot is very platform-specific conversations. And so I think if we just kind of take a more of a macro level approach looking at influence, there is 1% of any given population within any country around any topic that purely drives the conversation about your business. When I say your business, I mean your industry. So if it's sneakers, if it's privacy and security, if it's cloud computing, there's usually no more than 50 to 75 people, journalists, media, also just influential IT decision makers or influential bloggers, who drive the conversation. What they say, what they write about, what they record, what they post moves the rest of the market. The 9% of any market repackage that content, curate it, and share it, okay? The 90% consume it. They are lurkers. They rely heavily on word of mouth. They use search to make purchase decisions. So when I'm looking and talking with clients, I say, let's focus on the 1%, because if you're looking to create a category, launch a product, or create a campaign, focusing on the 1% essentially affects the broader 9 and 90% of the market. So through research and a lot of programs, that's what we found at 1,990. Now, the reason why that's important is because you don't have to focus on platform-specific influencers. Because if you know your 1% If you have that list of 50 to 75 people, and you know that of those 50 people, 25 of them are heavily influential on LinkedIn, 20, others are on Twitter, others are on Instagram, others just write for a blog and have several 100,000 RSS subscribers, you can then tailor your programs in the platforms that make sense to them. So you have more of an integrated approach, and you're not relying heavily, and I'm not saying that anyone on here is doing this, but you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket, because at the end of the day, Instagram could go away or lose its popularity. We've heard year in and year out that Facebook is declining, but I'm still seeing a lot of engagement. So again, staying away from the platform-specific focus is the way that I like to look at it. Not to mention, not saying that it's important to optimize and build programs within these platforms, but if you're truly looking for influencers, focus on who they are first, what they say and where they spend time, and build programs to reach them.
I like that. Okay, Jacques, we're jumping over to you. I'm jumping straight to tools. Let's talk about, you have a couple tools you use, Charlie, Crystal Knows, and Nova to personalize outreach. What's your favorite, and how do you use it?
So actually, great question. So these are AI tools that I'm using personally when I'm trying to engage with people that I think will have influence for the brand that I'm representing at any given point in time.
We're having a transcriber turn this into text, so they're listening in. Charlie, what is the website for Charlie? Do you know? Is it charlie.io?
It's Charlie App.
Charlie App.
CharlieApp.com. Charlie actually essentially extracts information from publicly available websites and sends you or provides you an email with a summary of the person that you're about to engage with. And so very interesting way of scraping information. And I mean, you can use it on a personal level when you're getting ready for a meeting, but when you're reaching out to somebody, that's key. You got to know who you have in front of you, right? Personally, my favorite, because it's the creepiest, is Crystal Knows. If you go to that website, crystalknows.com, it's just fascinating. Same approach. They scrape information off of publicly available websites.
Who wants to know how it's spelled? I would if I was sitting in you. CrystalKnows. Crystal Knows.
And it gives you a breakdown of who that person is, what kind of character it is. Do you need to talk in 3 sentences, or can you be sarcastic or not? And then how do you engage with them in an in-person meeting, via email? It even goes so far that it has a Chrome integration where when you send out an email to that person, then it actually corrects you when you don't stick to the guidance that they have based on that publicly available information. Like I said, really creepy, but also scarily accurate, right? And so when you identify these 1%, and when you maybe find somebody who's influential for your brand on Twitter or in a certain vertical, and you want to make sure that you establish a good rapport and a good relationship, you want to make sure that you know who you're talking to and how you actually engage with them, so that you don't mess up the relationship in the beginning, because that's so critical.
That's like a sales call prep for B2B of an influencer,
very true,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm using terms from some of the other conference rooms here. So, Vishal, I want to jump over to you. You have a really cool Captivate. Your technology does some cool stuff, but how are Snapchat and Facebook going to race to try and beat YouTube's ad exchange? Talk to us about that, and what can we do as companies to use this influencing area to use that to our benefit?
So if you look at specifically just with video alone, on the Facebook side, they're doing a lot of emphasis on Facebook Live. So I think if anyone wants to get into video just to learn, Facebook Live is hands down the best way. I've been talking to folks at Google. YouTube already has YouTube Live, Twitter already has Periscope, and everyone's been experimenting with Live, and quite frankly, no one's solved it yet. When I say solving it, no one's been able to create very highly engaging content on Live. But Facebook has so much reach, and they've prioritized it on the feed. So that's the one thing. The second thing, from an advertising perspective, right now I heavily feel that YouTube is by far years ahead of everyone else. When I say that, if you're a creator today, and you're making videos, you'll make the most money on YouTube, outside sponsorships and endorsements. Facebook is really trying to catch up. They just launched Content ID, which allows creators to go in and collect more information, but everyone's literally just trying to copy what YouTube is doing. YouTube Red is interesting because of the whole subscription service, and no one really knows if that's going to work or not. But I think if you're an advertiser right now, YouTube has that billion user behemoth across all the different channels. Video is still not successful. That's why they're pushing live so hard. And then on YouTube, they're actually now really trying to figure out how they can become more creator friendly. On the Snapchat side, there are a lot of folks that I've actually worked with that hack the API, and you actually do get analytics from it. The problem with it is you can't really sell that to anyone, right? So the biggest question you have to ask yourself on Snapchat is, how do you create something that scales? And right now, it's kind of a chicken and egg, right? If you look at all the rumors, they've actually hired some amazing rock star folks in the ad tech industry. So if you could probably guess, they're definitely building an exchange. They're going to be probably plugged into the SVs, and they're going to allow their supply to access all the inventory, right? So you can see the writing on the wall. So Snapchat's going to become programmatic. They're going to become very data-driven. It's just a matter of when they flip that lever. Right now, I think they're just collecting easy money while they build themselves up time, because quite frankly, they're so different from everyone else. I think the last thing just to add to that is, Snapchat is really a television-based system, which no one else really has solved yet. So they're very unique in terms of how they're positioned compared to YouTube and Facebook.
That's awesome. MediaLeaders, our company, offices at the Santa Monica Airport, and Snapchat just got 80,000 square feet of office space right next to us, right? Like right across the runway. It's pretty cool. We're pumped to see them every day. Okay, so the next thing I want to dive into are a few more tools, tips and tactics that we can use. Brad, I want to jump over to you, and you say your tool, which allows companies to run any type of advocate or influencer campaign you want, but you also use some other tools. Twilio for SMS, Kickbox to validate emails. Can you talk to us about those, Brad, and how you use them?
Sure. I think Twilio would be one that would be particularly interesting for this crowd. So Twilio is like basically messaging as a service. So all of our texts are sent out that way, and we actually just implemented this where now, so if you access one of our share pages via your mobile phone, you'll see an option to share via text, similar to as if you were inside of the Uber app. And our recent testing showed that something like, I think 30% of overall sales were coming from text. So email I said was 85% of referrals. Text got up to 30%. So substantially higher than Facebook has been, substantially higher than Twitter has been, substantially higher than really any of these other social platforms. Almost to the point of link sharing. So that tells me this is a behavior that consumers find to be really easy and really natural.
And then Kickbox validates emails. Why would you use that?
So whenever, it's for email deliverability. So any single time, if I'm trying to share with you, and so if we're using an email provider and too low a percentage of emails are delivered, then someone's going to get banned.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dive over into some examples. Jock, I want to come over to you. You talked about, you have a kind of a B2B influencer thing too, which I like because I don't think it's all B2C, a bunch of people with millions of Vine followers. Let's talk just for a sec about B2B. You mentioned LinkedIn's ebook, The Sophisticated Marketer's Guide to LinkedIn, written by industry leaders. Can you give us a couple tips from that?
Yeah, so I think first off, I think content really matters so much on the influencer side. You run the risk of almost being boring, but at the same time, if you give pragmatic advice and insight into the topics that matter to your audience, I think that's really what helps convince people that you understand the issues that they are facing. And so what I think is when you look at influencers, those are people in the community that touches your business, and you want these people that have really in-depth expertise about the areas that matter to the problems of your prospects and to your buyers, right? So you need to be able to show them that you can relate to these issues and that you can help them address them. And so that's for example why I thought this LinkedIn Marketer's Guide was so interesting, right? Because it's not a celebrity that you have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to engage with you. It's somebody who's just it's a group of people that they source from LinkedIn who have just been really successful at building out their profiles, at driving people to their profiles, at getting visits, at maybe getting a large number of people visiting the blog that they push out on LinkedIn Pulse, all these things. And so they took these people as LinkedIn experts and featured them as part of the community. And so things that they would bring up there is, how do you write an engaging blog post on LinkedIn Pulse? How do you optimize your profile? How do you engage with the people that come to your profile and that you want to connect with, right? You just click connect and they get this automated message that says, Job, want to connect with you on LinkedIn, thanks, and inserts your name. I don't care, right? So that's not my thing. And so the book says, this is not how you do it, right? There's an easier way to do it. You just personalize the email that goes out. There's a little button on the upper right-hand corner. You click on that, you've personalized the message, and you get a much, much higher response rate, right? And so the community was actually, or community leaders, people with experience but without a big brand name, were actually able to stand out and provide really useful insight and guidance to the people that matter to the LinkedIn audience.
That's awesome. Oliver, over to you. You talk about if you're small and you're starting out there's a number of free analytics tools. You mentioned Google Analytics. What is one key that a lot of us can use if we're a smaller or mid-sized company? What would we look at in our Google Analytics to help us track an influencer marketing campaign?
So from a influencer perspective or from the advertiser?
From the how many of us are advertisers or brands that want to advertise and run an influencer marketing campaign? I see a few hands, but I'm guessing more. How many of us have ever run an influencer marketing campaign? Okay, terrific, great. So let's say from an advertiser standpoint.
I mean, really, I think it's the sources of traffic that's key. If you can make that to, what we tend to measure is downstream conversion. The comment earlier about, it's a 99-1 ratio, we totally agree with that in terms of who's really driving your sales or your engagement, but it's never the 1% you thought it was going to be upfront. But I think in the publisher world, we were very surprised a few years ago that forums had this sort of crazy outsized influence in terms of how much GMV they drove, and a lot of the mainstream pubs had much less, radically less on a CPM basis and less even on an absolute basis. In the influencer world, it's not necessarily the major celebrities that you have to pay big bucks for who drive all the conversion, right? It's really that sort of mid-tier that have a real fan base of real people, who actually read their stuff and engage. So I think, we use our tools to look at where the traffic came from and where it converted and how can I go get more of that. Google Analytics is a great, sort of meld in with that where you can really understand where the traffic came from. If you get sophisticated, you can sort of turn on some of the tracking pixels to understand where have I seen this user before, how often do they come back, and so you can really develop a model of, who is that 1%, because it's not just the big names who charge the high price.
That's cool. Vishal, over to you one more time. You worked with Disney's movie Zootopia, and you ran a campaign that targeted mommy bloggers, if you will, for the campaign. Can you talk to us about that and kind of how it went? Can you give us a quick example?
We ran, so Uber had a huge budget with Zootopia. We ran a lot of influencer campaigns across Facebook, Instagram, and some Snapchat. And a lot of it was based on activations. Attribution is fundamentally broken on influencer campaigns, depending on the channel. But what's nice though is for Uber, they use a lot of promo codes. So within the application, they linked up specific types of campaigns that we ran with promo codes, and they found a huge success. Quite frankly, I think anyone who has the right targeting, spends the amount of time doing enough testing, and then actually spends the right money on amplifying that test, always is very excited to see the results of an influencer campaign. So specifically with Uber, I think the way they solved the attribution problem for themselves was the promo codes. That's how they linked it. If they didn't do that, there's no analytics platform that can help with influencer campaigns because it's all organic and controlled by the closed platform feed.
That's good. So that's a good key takeaway. Always use some kind of trackable thing so that people can, you can also monetize it or help to pay back your influencers. You use the word amplify. I really like that. Michael, back over to you. You say use paid media to amplify influencer content and make them more influential. They'll reciprocate it in more ways than one. Give us an example of that.
So I strictly look at influencers through the lens of more of kind of a B2B environment, right? Because, and it's an important distinction here. You have, on the B2B side, you have that 1% who drive the conversation. You have, on the consumer side, influential audiences. There are influential people on Vine, on Instagram, and on Snapchat. They're not always the same people. So the majority of my experience is on the tech side, although I've done some consumer type of influencer campaigns. So when I'm talking about amplifying content from an influencer group, the idea is identifying the 1% and then using technology to put them in a panel. What I mean by that is you put them into a database and you begin monitoring behavior of a very small group of people. It could be 50, 100, it could be less than 1,000. And you monitor these influencers to understand A, the the language and context of how they talk about technology, your business, anything in the industry, their consumption habits. So where are they sharing content from? Business Insider, TechCrunch, GigaOM, what have you. Understanding what keywords they're using, what times a day are they spending the most of the time online, and using that intelligence to then say, oh, okay, we talk about our technology like this. Influencers who are moving the market are talking about it this way. There's a gap.
Yeah.
We need to change our messaging. We need to change our website. We need to change the way we optimize search. We need to change the way that we write editorial on everywhere. So then you begin to show up in search results when your audience is searching for things that they were influenced by the 1%, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So the idea is you have all this stuff from your influencers. You're seeing what types of content that they're sharing and they're creating the most. And then you put paid media behind their content. So you can do, there's a lot of ways to do this through Twitter. You can do it through content platforms like Outbrain and Taboola, but you simply give them paid media push, which then increases their level of influence. One measure of influence is reach, right? How big is their community? The second level is relevance. How often are they talking about something related to your business? The third is resonance. When they create something, how far does it travel on the internet? How many links does it get? What's the engagement rate look like? So if you can help boost that resonance, they then become influential and they say, oh, wow, this brand TriNet is promoting my content. Maybe they added it on their LinkedIn page and put $1,500 behind it. Now all of a sudden my influence gets higher, and oh, by the way, I'm gonna write an ebook. I'd love to talk to somebody from TriNet because there's already a relationship there. So that's kind of, I know I'm talking fast, but it's kind of a circular kind of, I call it reciprocal altruism.
Yeah.
You give without any expectation of receiving anything in return, but it always comes back twofold.
Probably one of the better, and I think many of us would agree here, your business, what you say about it is great, but what the influencers say is a wonderful thing to listen to, right? I'm sure you guys have all seen brands that go, we are the future of XYZ, and that means nothing to the influencer. Like, wait, no, the thing that you do is you make it easier for my iPhone to turn off when I come home because I have baby, and the influencer or the consumer will describe it totally different. I think that is one of the most powerful marketing messages all of us learn is listen to people that like it, right? We need to do that to the 1% and the 9% maybe as much as we can. And then find out what are they saying about it and use that to amplify that. All right, over to, I've got a couple more questions and then we're going to start opening it up to some Q&A. Think about your questions because I want to get in a few really good questions. Oliver, you said keep content standards high. What do you mean by that and why?
Absolutely. Authenticity is really what drives your voice, right? If you come across to your audience as authentic, it expands, people engage, they spread your message. It doesn't take very much inauthenticity or low quality content to drive that audience away, turn them off, ruin your reputation. The ratio of sort of goodness to badness is remarkable in the sense that 10 fantastic outbound blog posts, tweets, pins, whatever they are, is all negated by one really bad, obvious product placement. Maybe it's even 50 to 1. I mean, it's a really high ratio. So making sure that everything you publish is authentic to who you really are, who your voice is, what your audience is looking for is just totally critical.
That's awesome. All right, Brad, you're our last one. I want you to think about your questions. We're going to get to them here in just a minute. You said, and I love this, Brad, I love how you are talking about kind of sharing the same amount of money with the influencer as is the consumer. That share is awesome. You say the advice for the next 3 years for brands is build advocacy into your customer experience. This ensures your customers will share the brand and help you acquire new customers. Give us an example of that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really the core of what we do, which is refer a friend programs. And the point here is that, so say you're cool new e-commerce brand. If you don't train your customers to go and get you new customers, somebody else will, and they'll get those customers. And so ultimately, the way that sharing works, it starts to work almost like we have this analogy of like SEO, being on the first page. Like the difference between being on the first page and the second page is massive in terms of results. The same is true for your customers. There's only so many brands that they can keep in their head that they're going to actually tell their friends about. And if you don't get to that list, whatever that number is, we think it's somewhere between 3 and 5 brands. If you're not on that short list, they don't hear about you. So it's actually very hard, and then the best brands are the ones that start doing this very early on. So we started working with Tom Shoes at the beginning of 2013, which was pretty soon after they made their big online push. And it became a behavior that their customers rely on, and it grew their business massively.
And Tom Shoes, they gave an offer of $20 to the advocate and $20 to the friend. And this offer came out of multivariate testing showing that $10 offers versus $15 offers versus $20 offers, right?
And the difference between giving $20 and giving $10 was 4 times the amount of sales.
4 times the amount of sales.
The difference between $15 and $10 was 20% more sales. So there was this cliff at 20 where all of a sudden people in the market were like, oh man, this is now worthwhile. Now I'm going to tell my friends about it. Now I'm going to make sure they buy shoes. And the way we set it up is that you actually have to buy 2 pairs. So it's not we're not getting you cheap customers either.
And this goes back to what Jock filled out. I'm going to answer him for himself. He says, play with the elements that you see succeeded and be creative about how you apply them. And that's really what you guys are doing, is you're testing things and you're being creative. There's no one answer here. All right, let's open it up to some questions. Yes, sir, in front.
Sure. So in a B2B space, what if your influencers do not like to be marketed? Say developers, meetup attendees, or whatnot.
I can answer that. So we do that all the time. So developers are probably the hardest audience to engage with because they're so, I don't know if there's any developers in here, my bad. They don't like marketing. They're kind of closed-minded. They want to sit in their hole and code and talk to other developers. So you have to be careful. And so I think part of understanding is part of understanding how to reach out and get a piece of content or reach out to them is understanding and getting as much intelligence of those developers as possible. Did a project for a company in New York, a media company. They wanted to understand developers so that they can seem to be more attractive because they wanted to hire these developers and they were all going to Google and Facebook and what have you. So we built a panel based on every person online who said that self-identified as a developer and several variations thereof. And we got to understand that certain nuances that the way developers engage with each other. So our client was able to tailor messaging, tailor the hiring process, tailor their recruiting teams, tailor the entire customer experience so that when developers find out about a job posting about it within this company, the customer experience matched the way that developers want to be marketed and talked to. So, and the same concept goes to any IT kind of decision maker, from developer to CIO. You gather as much intelligence as possible from that audience and then build and make it actionable. It's one way to identify, but if you don't do anything with it, what's the point? It's another to extract key insights and then make changes to the way you go to market, the way you label your products, the way you talk about yourselves through content, whether it be through the media, through TV commercials, through social media, right? If you can match that behavior, then all of a sudden they become more relatable to you.
There's also another component, if I can just chime in, is to think really about how is your business structured and what are you going after, right? So for example, in the case of the company I work for, we sell by vertical markets, right? And so what we do is we work with thought leaders in these verticals, and we don't try to push our specific brand through it. Because that would harm that kind of authenticity, right? And so we leave it essentially fairly open to them, but what they say, but we know they speak to the topic that is relevant to our audience, and then we essentially multiply that across various different channels that we have available, whether it's social, or whether it's papers and assets, or whether it's online advertising, or whatever it might be. And so the content remains the same. It essentially just gets blended depending on where on the scale of distribution it is, but it's always the same source, it's consistent, and it's credible, and it always comes from somebody who has authority in their respective industry.
Also,
real quick, one thing that I've done in the past is if you're trying to reach a certain community, like the developer community or any IT community, you don't hire marketers to actually create the content.
Yeah.
You hire developers. So I had an opportunity to hire a copywriter. I said, no, I want to hire an ex-developer who wants to get into marketing because he or she can speak the language and it comes from, it's more relatable, it's more authoritative.
yeah, I think it's a good tip. Yes?
So what kind of influencer campaigns would you use to drive sales on those markets for early adopters? So they're like, for example, AR, virtual fitting software companies to the e-fashion store. They're not too much influencers. How are you going to use the influencer campaign?
So everyone has influence, everyone. So I think it's finding the most influential around a specific topic, virtual reality, whatever it is. So you can create any audience you want. You define the parameters, you define the criteria, you create a panel, and you can begin to understand those specific things I've talked about, the basic demographics, the interests and characteristics that make them unique, and you can create influencers.
Let me ask you this.
Influencer.
Let me ask you this. How many of you are helping companies create influencers, saying, "Hey, we're going to make the CEO," right? Vishal, you're quite the influencer, right? You have a few followers. How many of you teach companies that you're working with how to make the CEO the influencer? Any of you? Have you?
Not the CEO.
We create influencers, but I wouldn't say it's at the CEO. We basically have advertisers reach out to us all the time saying, look, I have budget, how can I sort of create new advocates for my brand? And it's really, it's about sort of creating a long-term conversation, right? I think the pulse of spend, where you put in 20 grand and you look for the output, is always disappointing, right? I think if you make the long-term commitment to, there's a certain segment I want to reach, and I'm going to talk to them over time, hang out where they hang out, hire people of that demo into my company. Over time, any company can really create influence in that segment, but it's the long-term commitment. And it's funny, given we're such an ROI-driven company, but certainly, when you measure that kind of influence, you have to measure it over a longer period, or you'll always think, oh, I was not worth it.
It's not just the influence, and not just the CEO. So I didn't mean to say that, not the CEO. When we look at influence, and a lot of companies are moving towards how can we identify and mobilize influencers internally, and a CEO can or cannot be a part of that. Usually they're busy and have other obligations. But looking at other influencers within the company, the IT organization, marketing, PR, customer support, employee advocacy is a huge thing right now. It's a huge topic of conversation, and mobilizing large groups of people to augment organic reach, to augment what everything else you're doing in the market.
Yeah.
Because their content is much more trusted than people like us. We're marketers, right? When we create content and campaigns, it's not as authentic as if an employee of a company shared a thought leadership piece on his personal LinkedIn profile. That has a potential to drive a long-term, larger value sale than LinkedIn nurturing campaign.
Let me give you guys a tactical tip too. There's something that we've done that's cool. We have this social media safety for teenagers content that accidentally sprung upon us. And as a former Disney brand marketing guy, we found that parents all over the country, how many of you are parents? Any of you? Okay, so parents all over the country that have tweens, which are preteens, are asking the following question. What is Snapchat? And how should my 13, 12-year-old, 10-year-old use it, right? So we started talking with a bunch of influencers in the industry, and we were asking a lot of permission, and this answers the VR question we just heard. We created a 4-minute video that says, what is Snapchat? And we put it on YouTube, and it is a great little 4-minute video that says, this is why your students, this is how they market to your students, this is why your students use it, this is what you should know about it, whether it fits in our green zone, gray zone, or red zone, and then what you should do about it. And then we created 27 more. So anyone that you search for is, what is the Whisper app? We come up first. So 200,000 views later, all of our app guides, and there's a moral to the story, all of our app guides are the shared. Microsoft has given us a little bit of money to say, don't stop what you're doing on these app guides. Don't stop training parents on safety, and we don't accept any money from the apps, only from people that are awesome like Microsoft and Google and stuff. And here's what happens. So when we want to get in touch with mommy bloggers to promote this, we say, hey, here is our one page that makes it easy, the green zone, the gray zone, and the red zone. Professionally, that psychologists look at it, and we put them into a bucket that makes it easy for parents. So when we go to influencers that are mom influencers, we say, look, we want nothing in return. Look at this, what do you think? Use it. You can share the videos for free. You can steal the content, embed it, do whatever you want. And that content gets more shared than anything else. That page has 3,700 shares if you look at our little silly thing. But that kind of helpful content, it comes back to helping them, right? First. Okay, let's open up to a couple more questions. Anything else?
Really
Anybody?
quickly, what's the link for that?
It's on the front of your page. It's called safesmartsocial.com.
Okay.
The front of the handout, I think it's bullet number 5. I think if you have kids, it literally says if you have kids, check this out. It's the best free resource. It also gets us a lot of big paid speaking opportunities, even though it's 100% free. These guys help influencers that have given away content for a long time, and then they try and match the brand to it. And we've figured out a way to create that content to get lots of requests. Okay, any last words that you guys would have?
You asked about scrappy tools, right? And,
Yeah.
and one thing that I really like to use is a website called BuzzSumo. I don't know if you guys know that. It's really interesting because it helps you identify people that actually do have influence. So it allows you to segment by geo or by specific topics or keywords that you enter within certain time frames even. You can narrow it down, and it allows you to see who shares what kind of stories. And so, for example, you could see by keyword who is relevant in a specific geography on Twitter maybe or on Facebook, right? And so it allows you to really narrow down in a very simplistic way who are the people that actually might be part of that community that I want to reach and that I want to educate, but also that I want to share information with, so that hopefully I can engage in a dialogue with them to help them educate about my cause, whatever it might be.
BuzzSumo is a good tool. I have 2 quick tools. They're not free, but they're not that expensive. One is Get Littlebird, getlittlebird.com. A good friend of mine is the CEO, used to be a writer for Readwrite. It basically allows you to build influencers and then look at the content that they're sharing. The second is Tracker. I've actually been using Tracker a lot lately, and it's very helpful because not only does it allow you to kind of identify influencers, but you can actually segment what they're saying. So you can look at, are they talking about my competitors more than myself, my brand, and are they sharing content on our website and our blog? So you can kind of drill down a little bit and understand a little bit more of those.
Amazing tool.
Yeah.
Any cool tools?
Tracker.com or what?
TRAACKR.com.
Another one on a similar line, influence.co. It's sort of the master catalog of influencers across, across channels, and you can, search by product category, and it's smart about not just keyword, but like it understands that, pumps are a type of shoe and sort of has the hierarchy internally. So you can figure out who you want to, if you want to look for 5,000 influencers that all care about shoes and live in America, that will give you the master list.
Is it free?
Yes.
And remember, just a little word of caution. Don't go to some of these databases, and I think all of you guys would agree, don't blast an email saying, we're doing this program. Get old school, get scrappy, get them on the phone, ask them questions, just reach out to 3 of them at first, see what happens. You can't fail if you get on the phone and you listen, right? I mean, I think that's the key takeaway. These people deal with millions of followers, but starting out, it's not a bad idea to use your iPhone. Or your Windows phone, and do it that way.
If you guys go to my SlideShare, I did 2 presentations on launch exactly on this. There's about 30 tools in there. So it's a SlideShare presentation that talks about how to win at social.
And that's Vishal, and he's with Captivate. Hey, Jock, Brad, Oliver, Michael, Vishal, I want to thank you guys for coming out. Let's give them a round of applause.